Frank sat in his worn recliner, the fabric frayed yet familiar, a relic from happier times. The afternoon light filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows that danced across the room. He had always been a man of routine, finding comfort in the predictable rhythm of his days. But lately, everything felt different. A subtle tremor lingered in his hands, remnants of a minor stroke that had nudged him to reconsider the life he had led. Memories of laughter, shared secrets, and the warmth of his sister Lucy's presence flooded his mind, moments long buried under the weight of misunderstandings and unspoken words. Before we dive deeper into Frank's world, let me take a moment to ask you to subscribe to our channel. Your support means everything to us and is the only way these heartfelt stories can reach more people who need them. So please, take a moment to hit that subscribe button. As he gazed out the window, watching the leaves flutter in the gentle breeze, a thought flickered to life, a longing to reconnect, to bridge the chasm that had grown between him and Lucy. It had been decades since they last spoke, decades filled with silence heavy as the weight of 1,000 unsaid apologies. He remembered the last time they were together, voices raised, hurtful words exchanged. The argument had seemed trivial then, but it had morphed into a barrier that neither had dared to cross. Frank's heart ached as he reflected on the years that had slipped away, years where they could have shared joys and burdens alike. It was a realization that struck him with both regret and determination. He picked up a pen and a blank sheet of paper, his heart pounding as he began to write. Each stroke of the pen was an attempt to reach back through time, to pull Lucy into the present, to mend the frayed threads of their shared history. He started with simple words, hesitant at first, then allowing the memories to spill out. Childhood laughter, the smell of their mother's cooking, the games they played under the summer sun. Meanwhile, Lucy sat at her kitchen table, staring at the faded photographs that adorned the walls. Each image told a story, yet the one that resonated most was the one of her and Frank, their smiles wide, carefree, a snapshot of a time before the rift. She had spent years nursing that hurt, convinced that the pain of their separation was a shield against further heartbreak. Yet, as she dusted the frames, the memories seemed to urge her to reach out, to let go of the past and its shackles. The first letter arrived unexpectedly, slipped through the mail slot with a simple Frank written on the envelope. Her heart raced as she recognized his handwriting. She felt a surge of emotions, anticipation, fear, and a flicker of hope. With trembling fingers, she opened the letter, her eyes scanning the familiar loops and swirls of his script. He spoke of his recovery, of the emptiness that had accompanied his widowhood, and of the memories that haunted him. But most importantly, he spoke of her, his sister, the one person he had missed most of all. As Lucy read, tears brimmed in her eyes. She felt the ache of their shared past, the misunderstandings that had spiraled out of control, and a deep longing for connection. In that moment, she made a choice to respond. With every word she wrote, she unburdened her heart, sharing her own pain and the loneliness of her days. Their letters became a lifeline, a way to navigate the tumultuous waters of their emotions, one carefully penned sentence at a time. Weeks turned into months as their correspondence deepened. Each letter was a step toward healing, a gentle unwrapping of the layers of hurt that had built up over time. Frank shared stories of his life, the quiet joys that had kept him going, while Lucy recounted her own journey through widowhood, the moments of despair, and the flickering light of hope that sometimes broke through. They began to touch on the unresolved issues that had separated them, the misunderstandings that felt both monumental and trivial, depending on how one looked at them. One evening, as Frank sat with his latest letter in hand, he felt a wave of nostalgia wash over him, carrying with it a sense of urgency. The letters had rekindled a spark, igniting a desire to see Lucy face to face, to feel the warmth of her presence again. It was a daunting thought. What if the years had changed them beyond recognition? But the alternative, remaining in the shadows of their past, felt even more unbearable. With a deep breath, he penned his request to meet, suggesting a small cafe not too far from where they both lived. The thought of seeing her again, the sister he had adored, filled him with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. What would their reunion look like after all this time? Would they be able to embrace the memories that once brought them joy while also facing the pain that had driven them apart? Meanwhile, Lucy received the invitation with a mix of joy and anxiety. The idea of reconnecting was exhilarating yet terrifying. She spent hours preparing, choosing her outfit with care, wanting to look her best, yet feeling vulnerable at the same time. The cafe was a quaint little place they had visited as children, filled with the aroma of coffee and baked goods. It felt like the perfect backdrop for what was sure to be an emotional reunion. As the day approached, both siblings found themselves lost in thought, rehearsing the conversations they hoped to have, the memories they wished to share. The anticipation bubbled within them, a mixture of excitement and fear that churned in their stomachs. Would they find solace in one another's company, or would the past loom too large, casting shadows over the light they once shared? On the day of the meeting, Frank arrived early, his heart racing as he took a seat by the window, watching the world go by. Each person that walked past seemed to carry a piece of his anxiety with them, and he wondered if Lucy felt the same. Would she be able to see past the years of silence and hurt? Would they be able to reclaim the bond that had once seemed unbreakable? When Lucy finally entered the cafe, a part of him recognized her immediately, though the years had etched lines of wisdom on her face. She looked around, her gaze searching for a familiar presence, and when their eyes met, an unspoken understanding passed between them. It was as if time had folded in on itself, bringing them back to that moment in their childhood when they first learned the power of laughter and love. As she approached, the weight of years apart hung in the air, yet there was an undeniable spark of connection that ignited as they hugged tightly. It was a fragile moment, filled with both joy and the lingering tremors of past grievances, but in that embrace, they found a flicker of hope, the promise of healing, of rediscovery, and of a journey that had only just begun. As they pulled away from the embrace, Lucy's eyes sparkled with unshed tears, a testament to the emotional weight of the moment. The cafe was bustling, filled with the comforting sounds of steaming milk and clinking cups. Yet in that instant, it felt like they were in a world of their own. Frank gestured to a table in the corner, a quieter spot where they could talk without the distractions of the busy cafe. As they settled in, Frank took a moment to really look at her. Her silver-streaked hair framed her face softly, and the warmth in her smile, though tinged with nervousness, was familiar. It reminded him of the countless mornings they had spent together, sharing breakfast and dreams. Yet as they began to speak, the conversation flowed like a stream, sometimes bubbling with laughter, and at other times, slowing to a trickle as they navigated the depths of their shared history. "Can you believe how long it's been?" Frank finally asked, breaking the initial silence that had settled around them like a fragile veil. "It feels like a lifetime," Lucy replied, her voice tinged with emotion. "But it also feels like yesterday, in a way." They began to share stories about their lives since their last encounter. Frank spoke of his late wife, a remarkable woman whose laughter could light up any room. She had the gift of making every moment feel special, he reminisced, a smile breaking through the veil of nostalgia. "I remember one Christmas when she insisted we decorate the house like we were in a fairy tale. It was ridiculous, but I went along with it because she was so happy." Lucy chuckled at the image, her heart warming as she imagined Frank immersed in twinkling lights and glittering ornaments. "I can picture that. She always knew how to draw you into her world of joy." As they shared these heartfelt moments, a sense of comfort began to weave itself between them, mending the frayed edges of their once unbreakable bond. Yet, beneath the surface, the echoes of their past still danced in the shadows, waiting to be acknowledged. "Do you remember the argument we had?" Lucy ventured cautiously, her voice barely above a whisper. The mention of it hung in the air like a fragile crystal, beautiful yet precarious. Frank's expression shifted, the joy of their reunion momentarily shadowed by the weight of their shared pain. "I do," he admitted, looking down at his hands. "I've thought about it a lot. It was such a stupid fight, and yet it tore us apart. It wasn't just the argument, though. Lucy replied, her voice steady despite the tremor of emotion. It was everything that followed. I felt abandoned when you didn't reach out. I thought you didn't care. I felt the same way, Lucy, Frank confessed, his voice thick with regret. I thought I was protecting you by staying away. I didn't realize how much hurt I was causing. I wish I had been braver. A silence enveloped them, heavy with the weight of their confessions. In that moment, they understood that the pain they had carried for so long was not just a burden, but a shared history. It was a testament to the love that had once flourished, now obscured by years of silence and misunderstanding. Lucy reached across the table, her hand resting gently on Frank's. I've missed you, you know. Despite everything, I've always wanted my brother back in my life. Frank looked up, meeting her gaze with a mix of vulnerability and hope. I've missed you too, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I never stopped thinking about you, Lucy. I just didn't know how to reach out after everything that happened. The cafe around them buzzed with life, yet they were cocooned in a moment that felt sacred. It was as if the world had paused to witness their reunion, to honor the journey that had brought them back together. As they continued to talk, memories began to flow more freely, punctuated with laughter and the occasional tear. They recounted their childhood adventures, climbing trees, building forts, and the secrets they shared under the stars. Each story peeled back the layers of hurt, revealing the love that had always been present beneath the surface. Do you remember that summer when we tried to build a treehouse? Frank asked, a grin spreading across his face. We thought we were going to be the next great architects. Lucy laughed, her eyes sparkling with the recollection. And it ended up being a pile of wood that collapsed on us. Mom was furious when she found out we'd been in the tree without telling her. Yeah, but it was worth it for those few moments we spent up there, pretending we were kings of the world, Frank replied, a nostalgic smile tugging at his lips. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting golden hues through the cafe windows, they found themselves wrapped in a cocoon of shared laughter and warmth. It was as if time had folded in on itself, allowing them to reclaim the lost years in the span of a single afternoon. But as they spoke, a deeper understanding began to emerge. With each story shared, they also began to explore the emotions that had kept them apart for so long. They talked about their spouses, the grief they had navigated in solitude, and the realization that they had both been carrying the burden of their shared history alone. I thought I was strong enough to handle everything by myself, Lucy said, her voice breaking slightly as she reflected on the loneliness that had often enveloped her. But in reality, I was just isolating myself from everyone, including you. Frank nodded, feeling the sharp pang of empathy. I did the same. I thought it was better to keep my distance, but I only ended up feeling more isolated. We could have supported each other through all of it. Their honesty created a bridge between the years of silence, a pathway illuminated by the light of understanding. It was a testament to the resilience of family bonds, the acknowledgement that even in the face of misunderstanding and pain, love had the power to reconnect them. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Lucy felt a sense of gratitude wash over her. I'm so glad we're here, Frank. I've waited so long for this moment. Me too, he replied, his voice filled with emotion. I want to make up for lost time, if you'll let me. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, weaving in and out of memories, laughter, and the occasional moment of poignant silence. They spoke of their hopes for the future, of the possibility of rebuilding their relationship, and how they could honor the memories of their spouses while creating new ones together. Let's not let another decade go by without talking, Frank suggested earnestly, his eyes reflecting the sincerity of his words. Lucy smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. Let's make a pact. We'll meet regularly, just like we used to. Maybe we can even start a new tradition. Coffee and memories? Frank proposed, a twinkle in his eye. Exactly, Lucy replied, her heart swelling with affection for the brother she thought she had lost forever. And maybe we can start working on that treehouse again. Only this time, we'll actually read the instructions, Frank laughed, the sound echoing with the joy of rekindled connection. As they left the cafe, The evening air was crisp and refreshing, filled with the promise of new beginnings. Hand in hand, they stepped into the future, determined to navigate the journey of forgiveness together. The path ahead would undoubtedly hold challenges, but for the first time in decades, they felt hopeful. If this story is touching your heart, make sure to comment from where you are hearing this amazing story. Their journey was just beginning, but they were no longer alone in their struggles. They had found each other again, and with that connection came the strength to heal. As they walked side by side, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow that seemed to wrap around them like a comforting embrace. The world felt vibrant and alive, a stark contrast to the isolation they had both endured for so long. Frank glanced at Lucy, her face illuminated by the fading light, and felt a rush of gratitude. The years of silence had created an ache that had been too long unacknowledged, but now, standing together, it felt as though they were finally beginning to heal. "I can't believe how much I've missed this," Lucy said, her voice light with a hint of laughter. "Just being able to talk and share without all the confusion hanging over us." "Me too," Frank agreed. "It feels like we're reclaiming something precious. It's almost surreal." They ambled through the quiet streets, reminiscing about their childhood neighborhood, the places they had played, and the adventures they had shared. The familiar landmarks stirred a deep sense of nostalgia, awakening memories that had long been dormant. "Do you remember the old oak tree?" Frank asked, his eyes brightening. "We thought it was the biggest tree in the world. We spent hours climbing it and pretending we were explorers." Lucy laughed softly, a sound that melted away the years. "Of course, and we got in trouble for it when Dad found us up there. He said we were going to fall and break our necks. Right? But we were too busy being kings of our little kingdom to listen." He chuckled, shaking his head at the folly of youth. "Ah, those were the days," Lucy sighed, her smile fading slightly. "I wish we could go back there sometimes, just for a moment." Frank nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "But maybe we can create new memories together, too. We don't have to be defined by the past." As they approached Lucy's home, the evening air was filled with the sounds of the world winding down. Crickets chirped, and the faint scent of blooming jasmine wafted through the air. Lucy turned to Frank, a serious yet hopeful expression crossing her face. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness. It's not just about letting go of the past, but also about honoring what we've been through." Frank's gaze softened. "You're right. It's painful to confront the hurt, but it's also necessary to move forward. I think we need to forgive ourselves as much as each other." "Exactly," Lucy replied. "We've both carried our share of blame, and it's time to let that go. We can't change what happened, but we can change how we move forward." Frank felt a weight lift from his chest at her words. They stood there for a moment, the quiet night wrapping around them, as if the universe itself was holding space for their newfound connection. "Would you like to come in for some tea?" Lucy offered, her eyes sparkling with a warmth that invited him into her world. "I'd love that," Frank said, feeling a rush of anticipation. Inside her cozy home, the familiar scent of chamomile filled the air as Lucy prepared the tea. The kitchen, adorned with memories of family gatherings and laughter, felt welcoming. They settled at the table, mugs in hand, surrounded by the remnants of a life filled with love and loss. As they sipped their tea, the conversation flowed naturally once more, touching on shared dreams and the possibilities that lay ahead. Frank shared his desire to travel, to explore the places he had always wanted to see but had put off for too long. Lucy's eyes lit up at the thought. "Let's do it together," she exclaimed, her excitement palpable. "We could go to that little coastal town we used to love. Remember the beach?" Frank grinned, the idea igniting a spark of adventure within him. "I do. We could walk along the shore and collect seashells like we used to. I'd love to do that with you." And just like that, they began to sketch out plans for future adventures. Trips to places that had once held meaning for them, and perhaps new destinations that could become significant as they created fresh memories. As the night deepened, their conversation turned to more serious matters, the pain of their losses and the way grief had shaped their lives. Frank spoke about the void left by his wife, the quiet evenings that had felt unbearable without her laughter echoing through the house. Lucy shared her own struggles, how she had buried herself in work, pushing people away while trying to cope. "I didn't realize how lonely I had become," she admitted, her voice tinged with sadness. "I thought I was protecting myself, but in reality, I was just shutting everyone out." Frank reached across the table, placing his hand over hers. "You're not alone anymore, Lucy. We can lean on each other. We've both been through so much, and it's okay to lean into that vulnerability." Tears brimmed in Lucy's eyes, but this time they were tears of relief, of recognizing that they didn't have to navigate their grief alone. "Thank you, Frank," she whispered, her heart swelling with gratitude. "For being here, for understanding." In that moment, they forged a bond not just of siblings, but of allies in healing. They spoke late into the night, sharing not just memories but their hopes and fears. The walls built by misunderstanding and hurt began to crumble, replaced with a foundation of empathy and love. Eventually, the conversation turned to the future, how they could create a new chapter together. They discussed the importance of family, the connections they still had, and the possibility of bringing others into their renewed relationship. "Maybe we can organize a family gathering," Frank suggested, excitement bubbling in his voice. "Invite everyone, cousins, aunts, uncles. It could be a way to reconnect with the family we've both missed." Lucy's face brightened at the idea. "I love that. It would be a great way to bridge the gap, not just for us, but for everyone, to show them that we're rebuilding our connection." As they made plans, the night slipped away, and the stars twinkled outside, bearing witness to their journey of reconciliation. With each laugh, each shared moment, Frank and Lucy felt the healing take root, intertwining their lives once more. The journey ahead wouldn't be without its challenges, but they were ready to face them together. They had rediscovered the bond that had once been unbreakable, and now it was stronger than ever, forged in the fires of understanding and acceptance. "Here's to new beginnings," Frank said, raising his mug in a toast. "To new beginnings," Lucy echoed, her heart full as they clinked their mugs together, the sound ringing clear in the stillness of the night. In that cozy kitchen, surrounded by the warmth of memories and the promise of what was to come, they began to envision a future filled with laughter, love, and the unshakable bond of family. It was a journey of forgiveness, a heartfelt reconnection, and a celebration of the resilience that had brought them back together after all those years apart.